Good morning from Cusco on Sunday, the 29th of January, 2023. If you look behind me out there, you can see long lines for gas. You can't see in that direction, but they go several blocks, and they've been like this since 6 a.m. There's a lot less horn honking now than there was at 6 a.m. Anyway, this means that the gas tanker trucks have made it into the city, so that is, generally speaking, good news. Some people are out of gas and pushing their cars. That guy is a taxi driver. Anyway, so I've decided I'm going out for breakfast, and this morning I'm having pancakes, which I almost never have, but yeah, pancakes for a change. I still haven't heard that cooking gas has come into town, so that we're still going to be waiting on, but automotive gas, gasoline, is in town. The cab driver who I spoke with this morning already said that yesterday he went all the way out to Anta, which is a little ways away. It's a good ways away. It's, I don't know, probably 30 kilometers. But it's a lot of traffic to get there usually, although probably not if everybody was out of gas. And he said he paid 27 soles a gallon for gas there. How much is 27 soles a gallon for gas? Well, for those of you in the US, you can compare that at $7 a gallon. So this is about $3 a gallon higher than it usually is here. Normally I wouldn't be able to record a video in here because it's totally full and totally noisy, but things are still very deserted on the tourism front. So I'm going to show you some infographics that have been circulating in a little bit about that. But yeah, so the big news overnight, the big news that came in this morning is that there was one person dead and another expected to die who is in intensive care following the protests in Lima, which intensified significantly last night. Some roads have been unblocked. It's unclear whether that is going to continue being the case and in what places that will continue being the case, and whether that is only going to be main roads, whether that's going to be side roads, whether that's going to be roads that affect tourism or major transport or what. It's definitely wearing on people, and people are definitely fatigued. Armed with pancakes, or rather fortified by them, let's take a look at how much Machu Picchu is losing, percentage-wise per this infographic. From the train, 43% of its revenue. From hotels, 13% of revenues. From entrance fees, 12%. Bus up to the site, 8%. Other, 8%. Food and drink, 6%. Artesania, which is handicrafts, 6%, and tour guides, 4%. So you can see the lion's share of the money being lost is being lost by the train to Machu Picchu, which is not revenue that directly goes into the hands of Machu Picchu itself. Anyway, it's Sunday, and I'm walking down the street in the kind of tourist center section, and buenos dias, and you can have a look at what it looks like on a sunny Sunday morning, a little later in the day.
A 13 grados en forma piramidal. O sea, es un claro ejemplo en nosotros mismos. No siempre preparamos.
It's the famous stand, the big one.
Hey, good morning. What do you really know about Peru? How many of these questions can you answer without Googling? Give it your best try. No shame if you don't know something, because now is a chance to learn in the explainer I will do sometime this coming week. Number 1, where is Peru located? Number 2, can you name 2 countries that share a border with Peru? 3. What is the capital of Peru? 4. Can you name 3 cities in Peru? 5. Can you name some major exports? 6. What are official languages of Peru? 7. How many people live in Peru? 8. What do you think Peru is best known for? 9. Can you name some famous Peruvians? And 10. What are some famous Peruvian foods? And for a bonus, is there anything else you think is worth mentioning? Anyway, I went out for a very nice breakfast, and after that I took a walk to the Plaza de Armas and sat there for a while until it was clear that it was about to start raining. And I actually spent a while talking to a couple of vendors, the vendors who carry little souvenirs and stuff around and sell them to whatever tourists are going by. But since there weren't any tourists, we just had to sit around and have a conversation, which was lovely and everything. But got back, and look, the lines for gas are still exactly how they were. I talked to the street vendors a fair bit, partly because I've known some of them all my life, and partly because, it just happens that way. Anyway, today a lovely lady named Nicolasa sat down and we chatted about a variety of things, and she is from Anta, where the only death in the Cusco protests, the person who died was from Anta, the province of Anta, which is one of the neighbor provinces, one that we go through on the route to Ollantaytambo that is shorter from Cusco. Anyway, she's from Surite, which is a small town in that neck of the woods, but has lived in Cusco for a long time. And she had a regular job that closed up during the pandemic, and then she managed to rent a small shop, and then she could barely keep that going. And so finally she just has her inventory at home, which is a room in the convent of the sisters at Santa Clara. And now she takes her market goods out to sell on the plaza. And we sat there talking for a while about all kinds of stuff, good times, bad times, old times. She's about the same age as me, in her 50s. And we just chatted a whole bunch, and I didn't need any souvenirs, but she gave me a fridge magnet anyway, and I bought her and another vendor named Dora, who came up towards the end of our conversation, gelatin, which is delicious when you're thirsty, and it's a classic thing. And then it was looking like it was going to rain, so I came home. But so what are their opinions? What are their opinions on the whole situation right now? Well, they say it would be good if the president would resign and Congress would provide a solution to everything that's going on. However, being vendors aged 50 plus, they don't see that as likely. They don't think anybody in Lima cares one tiny bit how they're doing or what happens in provinces. And there isn't really any evidence to the contrary. The one nice thing is there's plenty of time to sit and have conversations under conditions like this, but hard to make a living. So anyway, I bought them gelatina and secretly slipped them enough cash for lunch. But what are you going to do? Anyway, airplanes are flying in, just not full of tourists. And there is a military helicopter that won't stop circling, even though literally nothing is happening here. It is completely chill, except for the long gas lines. The word on the street is that tomorrow is going to suck even more, that they're going to strike even harder. That helicopter is close and loud. Anyway, so the word is tomorrow is going to suck even more. Even harder strikes. And people are starting to feel despair, right? Like, they're like, what do we do? And everyone who depends on tourism understands how this works, because they're like, listen, even if a solution arises tomorrow, it's not like tourists come back tomorrow. People have canceled everything through July. There's like 5% of reservations that haven't been canceled. Everything else is canceled. There's no work. There's not going to be work until at least July. People who are traveling for tourism can't just up and decide to take a vacation at the drop of a hat. They can't change what they've already scheduled. So people who had vacations scheduled for that time have already made plans to go someplace else. People who have canceled maybe haven't gotten their money back, or they have vouchers for some other time, but they still got to worry about when they're going to be able to take that actual vacation and do stuff. And people have lost money. And so no, people don't expect that there being a political solution at this point is going to improve the situation with respect to tourism. And then one of the ladies I was talking to mentioned that some have said that perhaps the government of Peru could give sustenance funds or relief money to people in provinces and departments where all of this unrest has been something that hits them very hard. And even though that would be like a great use of funds for winning the hearts and minds of people, that's not going to happen. And everybody knows that's not going to happen, because the fact of the matter is everybody in Cusco knows nobody in Lima cares what happens to them. Is that true or not? Who knows? But that is definitely the prevailing perception. Oh, before I forget, somebody asked this excellent question in a comment on a video the other day, which is, why would they be protesting in front of the United States Embassy? And the short answer to that is because if the United States appears to pay attention to this, then perhaps what with the United States reputation, deserved or not, for wanting to foster democracy and free elections and all of that kind of stuff, perhaps they will pay attention and start to put pressure on the Peruvian government to respond differently to protests than they have been doing so far. Unfortunately, the United States has already declined to engage in any sort of mediation type activity. Another possible reason is because some people believe that the current United States ambassador is, as a veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, perhaps indicative of U.S. intervention in policy here. No way to say, of course, what the actual reality of any of that is, but those are the two reasons that have been expressed. Another question that's come up is folks have said things like, what I fail to grasp is that their actions seem to impact themselves, this is referring to protesters, and their own communities more than anything else. It seems more inclined to push people away from the movement than it would to increase the base of grievance supporters. Blocking the passage of goods has greater impact locally, but unless they can block the seaports, it's just a broken play that talks about, whether or not stuff can get into Lima. So to me, it just looks like they're shooting themselves in the foot, and I don't see why they wouldn't focus on eliminating corruption at the local level and at the governor level regionally, instead of calling for Congress and the president to step down and so forth. So it's a really tricky question. Yes, corruption is prevalent at all levels of Peruvian government, like very prevalent. It's well entrenched. But I would say that strategically, the issue is that people in provinces are of the opinion that nobody in Lima, perhaps least of all folks in Congress or the cabinet or the president, cares what happens outside of Lima unless it affects them personally somehow. Unrest in a province theoretically affects a congresista, and the blockage of flow of goods to Lima theoretically causes a limeño to at least complain about the price of potatoes. The problem is, when those people in Lima or Congress or whatever do notice, they don't seem to suddenly start caring about people in provinces. So then, strategically, the thinking is that maybe people who are wealthy and in other countries who the national government might care about, like because they want to invest in mining or tourism, could be caused pause to notice and care for a hot second, thus putting pressure on the Peruvian government to take some sort of action. But once it all goes on for long enough, and the evidence seems to be that nobody does in fact care what happens to indigenous people in provincias, then people start to be like, okay, well, this is pointless. We're not making anybody with power care, so let's just suck it up and get back to the old routine that's never going to change anyway. But then, if, say, 19 people die in Juliaca in a few hours, and the response from the wealthy and powerful is, good, those were terrorists and they deserved it, or similar, regular people feel like they cannot just stop protesting, even if doing so comes at a cost. And the perceived risk and cost of ceasing protest becomes much higher stakes, and people take to the streets where they are to do whatever they think they can do, and to join the mobilizations of people headed to or already in Lima. So opinions are absolutely varied and mixed, and no group of protesters is a monolith, but I mean, this is as brief and neutral an explanation as I can give as to why people are protesting in places other than like right in front of the Supreme Court in Lima, although they are protesting there too. And this is sort of a classic question that gets asked about people protesting all the time, right? Is, oh, well, why are those people, quote unquote, those people, protesting in ways that destroys their own area? And it always comes up. You can read a whole lot of opinions about this. But anyway, yeah, onwards. Perhaps I will have more updates for you later in the day. If not, it'll be tomorrow morning. Thanks a lot.